Hello, Yaxley Infants. It's Reverend Sarah, and it's lovely to be back with you again. I hope you've had a lovely Easter holiday, and I wonder what kind of things you got up to. If I was there with you, I would ask you, but I'll just have to guess what kind of things you did. I wonder if any of you did explorers over the Easter holidays. Did you enjoy it? We had a great time doing it. I hope you've had a really lovely break, and I hope you've had a great first week back at school as well. Now, before your Easter holidays, we were talking about some of the Easter stories and about what happened in what we call Holy Week, when Jesus had that special meal with his friends. We talked about how he had the bread, I'm not calling that very well, and the wine. We also talked about how Jesus washed people's feet. And then we remembered on the Good Friday that Jesus died on the cross because he loves us so much. And the Easter Saturday we sit and we wait because we don't know what's going to happen. And then on the Easter day, we remember that those women and those friends of Jesus went to the tomb where Jesus had been laid, and he wasn't there. And we remember that Jesus is risen on Easter Day. I wonder if you got any chocolate for Easter. I did. Have you got any chocolate left? I actually do have a little bit left, which is quite amazing. But if you had a big Easter egg, I wonder if you broke it in half and there is nothing in it, is there? And sometimes that's not a great surprise. But actually, for Christians, on Easter Day, we remember that the tomb being empty was the most amazing surprise for us because Jesus is alive. And so today I'm going to tell you another story that follows all these different stories. I wonder if you did any walking over the Easter holidays. Did you go out with your family or friends and go for a walk around Yaxley, or maybe somewhere a bit greener, or maybe you went down to the fens and had a walk? If you were going for a long walk, did you need to prepare for what you're going to do? Just have the right footwear on? Well, today has been a really beautiful day, and I've been out for a walk with a lady from our church. Now, I wore these when I went out for a walk. They are my very favourite shoes. They are so comfortable, but they're getting a little bit warm now because they've got a slightly furry lining. So if you were going for a walk, what would you wear? Would you wear sandals? Well, I wouldn't, because I'm not very good at wearing sandals. I only tend to wear them if I'm going to maybe something like a wedding or I need to dress up a little bit. So I wouldn't go for a long walk in sandals, but some people would. I love these shoes. These are my sparkly, glittery shoes. Would you go for a walk in these? Well, I wouldn't, because they're not very comfortable to wear for a long time, but maybe you would. Again, I might wear them if I was going to a party or something like that. Now, I'm going to have to reach down at this time because I put my other shoes on the floor, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So these are my walking shoes, and I've got walking boots as well. They're quite old, actually. I've had them quite a lot of years, and they're on the floor because they're a little bit muddy still from the last walk that I did. But these shoes are brilliant in whatever the weather and whatever I'm walking on, whether I'm walking on the pavement or whether I'm walking on grass or in the fens. They're really good. They're very sturdy shoes. So depending on what kind of walk you're going on, it'll depend about what you take with you. Perhaps you need to take a drink with you. Perhaps you need to take a snack with you. Depends how far you're going. But today's story is about 7 miles, a 7-mile walk. And that for us would be like walking to Peterborough. So from Yaxley to Peterborough, roughly about 7 miles. And it would take us today probably about 2.5 hours. But you have to remember that these stories were written about 2,000, it happened over 2,000 years ago, and were written down. But they weren't written down straight away. They were written down a little bit after the event. And so all these stories were passed on by people telling the story and then passing it on to someone else, telling them a little bit about it. And they've been formed into what we now know as the Bible, which is the Christian book that we use. So this story happens either on the day that Jesus rose again or maybe the next day. And they are two people who are walking and talking together. And they're walking from Jerusalem, which is where all those events that I talked about, that Maundy Thursday meal, Jesus on the cross and Jesus rising again, happened. And they're walking all the way to Emmaus. Emmaus is about 7 miles away, as I said. So, as I said, Yaxley to Peterborough. So it's not a really long walk, but you might want to get your right footwear on, and you might want to prepare for what you might need on the way. Because if you walk 7 miles, you've got to walk the 7 miles back again. And these two friends were walking and talking. Now we know that one of them was called Clopas, but we don't know the name of the other one. So they were doing their 7-mile walk, and they were walking and talking together. And they were trying to make sense of all the stories that we've just thought about that happened over Easter, that meal, Jesus on the cross, and that Easter day when Jesus had risen. And they must have been talking about them and trying to make sense of them and just wondering about what had happened. And suddenly, as they were walking, they found someone else was walking with them. Now, if you go for a walk, you'll pass lots of people on the way, and at the moment you probably have to step to one side to let them go, or they might do the same for you. But this person just appeared with them in their walk and asked them what they were talking about. And so they tell this person, they say, don't you know all that's happened over these last few days? Because it must have been really big news. They must have been talking a lot about them. And his friend said, no, tell me about what you're talking about. So they tell him about all these events. And after a little while, he said, don't you understand what's happened? Now, if someone would come into a conversation with me and had asked that, I would be thinking, I wonder what's gone on. And this person then starts to make sense of all these stories. He starts to teach them and tell them all about what had gone before. Now, our Bible, as it says, our Christian book, is made up of 66 different books, and it's made up of 2 bits. It's the Old Testament and the New Testament, which are the bits before Jesus and the bit when Jesus lived and after he lived. And this person started telling them about all these stories, about why they happened, about what they meant, and leading right the way up to all the events that they had seen take place over those last few days in Jerusalem. Do you know who this person is? I think you might know who this person is. But Clopas and his friends didn't know. So they kept on walking. They did their wiggly route until they got to Emmaus. And they got to Emmaus and it was getting dark. Now this person who was with them went to go on. They went to go on to wherever they were walking to. But Clopas and his friend said, would you stay with us for the night? And so the friend went in. They were so interested in what he was saying that they went into that house and they started preparing a meal. Now the person with them asked whether or not he could say a prayer over the meal. And that's what Christians do sometimes. Before they eat a meal, they'll say a prayer to thank God for it. And the friend said, no, we don't mind at all. So this person said a prayer and he took the meal that was put in front of him and he broke the bread. Now, does that remind you of another story? Does that make you think about that Maundy Thursday, that last meal that Jesus had with his disciples? Well, I think it must have made these 2 people realise, because as Jesus prayed and broke that bread, they suddenly realised that it was Jesus. They hadn't known who he was all along, but suddenly they knew it was Jesus sitting with them. But Jesus didn't stay there and have a conversation with them. Suddenly Jesus disappeared and these 2 friends find themselves around their dinner table by themselves. And as they realise it was Jesus with them, they realise they can't stay there. They've got to go back to Emmaus, back to Jerusalem, because they were in Emmaus. And they got up. And they didn't just walk and talk back. They ran. They just wanted to go and tell everybody else about what they had seen and that Jesus had been with them. So they do the 7 miles back again, back to Jerusalem. And they go and tell Jesus' friends that they have seen Jesus. They have walked with him and talked with them, and that he is alive. Some of the Christian stories are a little bit weird, and this is one of them. But I love this story because it reminds us, and the Bible reminds us, that Jesus is always with us. God is always there. And so if we're a little bit worried in a day, we might want to ask Jesus to help us. So as you think about this story and all the Easter events, I wonder what you are thinking at the moment. I often talk to you about church colours. Well, if we were in church at the moment, we'd be wearing white because that's the colour of celebration in the church. Now, our church is closed because we're having some building work done in it for a few weeks. But the Easter season in church, we remember these stories, and all the stories that happened afterwards happen for quite a few weeks as we stay in Easter and think about all these things. So I wonder what you are thinking today and what your questions are. We're going to have a quiet moment for reflection. And you might want to think, what are your questions, or what are you thinking, or what do you love about this story? And then I'm going to say a prayer. And if you want to join in the prayer, you can, and you can say Amen at the end with me. So let's just have a few moments of thinking quietly to ourselves. And so as you hold all those thoughts, I'm going to pray. Loving God, we thank you for this amazing story and for the amazing stories of Easter. Help us to know how exciting they are as stories, and help us as we go into this term to want to learn more as we come into school, as we come to assemblies, all the different things that we will do. And help us to know that if we're worried, that you are with us. So if you want to join in at the end of the prayer, you can say Amen. Well, I've loved being back with you again. I look forward and hope that maybe this term, who knows, I might get to come into school, but we will see. But take care. I hope you've had a great week this week and look forward to next week. And I will do another assembly for you in the not too distant future. Take care, Yaxley Infant. Bye.